I think it's in the author's voice,
Hmm.
really. I mean, people who know me personally in real life, if they read them in my books, they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I just hear you."
Aw.
And that's really nice. And I think that's true for a lot of authors, actually.
Hi everyone, Maureen Lee Lenker here, and we have a special treat for you today. I am here with best-selling romance author Julia Quinn, and we are talking First Comes Scandal, her newest release, which comes out April 21st from Avon Books. And we'll also be talking all things Bridgerton, as First Comes Scandal is her latest Bridgerton prequel. There was a decade between the last full Bridgerton novel and then your first prequel. So what made you decide to return to the world in this big way, and why a prequel series instead of, I don't know, talking about the original Bridgerton's children or anything like that?
There were two reasons why I went back. The main one was I'd always had people have asked for so long to see more about the parents, Violet and Edmund, and a lot of people ask for their love story. And I never wanted to do that because, I mean, it doesn't give anything away. It's no spoiler at all to know that Edmund, the father of the 8 Bridgerton children, dies quite young. That's comes out early on in the first book. And I just, and I would say to people, I think it would be really tragic. You read this romance novel, and romance is all about happily ever after. And then you find out that you read another book, you're like, wait a minute, she killed him off at like the age of 38. What's that about? And so then all my readers are like, that's okay. We don't care. And I said, well, can you imagine if that was the first book of mine you ever read, Violet and Edmund's story, and then you find out I killed them? And at which point they're like, oh, all right. Yeah. And there's no way to go back and like make it some like soap opera miracle he wasn't really dead. I mean, there's no way. So I never wanted to do that, but I always liked the idea of seeing who they were. And so I had this idea years ago of maybe doing some kind of prequel where they could show up as secondary characters. And so that's the main reason I went backwards, so that I could show them as secondary characters. And then the secondary reason I went backwards is because people don't expect it. People expect you to do the children. And I thought might be more fun to do, to go backwards instead. And what was funny though is that because of the way that the series evolved, Edmund and Violet didn't really show up in a big way at all until the final book of the Rokesby series, which is the other name for the prequels. But they did show up, and it was really fun. And it was also super fun that I got to do some of the main characters as children. Um,
Yeah, I was going to ask. It's so delightful. I definitely noticed in the book that you have Violet and Edmund, but we also get to see the three eldest Bridgertons
mhm.
in their very early years. How fun was it for you to be able to take a look at them as toddlers?
Unbelievably fun. And actually, what was really cool, and I got to back up for a second. So I'm not a really visual author. And so like people always say, well before the whole Netflix thing happened and Bridgerton started getting filmed, people say, oh, who would you cast? And I don't know. I don't know. And so, but now that they have been cast by a really amazing casting director who has also taught me that I could never be a casting director, um, that's who they are in my head. It's like when I think of them, I see them. And so when I met Luke Newton, who's playing Colin Bridgerton, I met him twice, but when I met him last fall, I said to him, I was like, I'm writing this book right now where you're a baby. And so I joked with him and I was like, I need a baby picture of you. And he said, he's like, I'm going to call my mom. And later that day, he sent me a photo of him as a baby, which is adorable. And so that's like calling the baby now. Like the baby actually has more of a face than the two main characters do because he's been cast by a professional casting director.
Nicholas is a doctor,
Hmm.
and Georgiana is also very interested in medicine. I know that you studied medicine for a time, but how did you decide to make him a doctor and sort of delve into the world of 18th century medicine?
Well, I've always been really interested in the history of medicine, and if you go back into some of my previous books, you can see that. And when he was wicked, the hero had malaria. I've also in To Sir Philip with Love, there was a secondary character who had clinical depression. And so that was very interesting to look into how that might have been understood at the time. The answer is not well. Um, And so this was just kind of fun. I want to, I was like, well, I've got a fourth son. He's got to find his way in the world. Why don't I make him do this? And then, it's something I can explore that is really interesting to me. And so we kind of went with that. And I did actually go to medical school very briefly before I withdrew. And I'm also married to a doctor. So that helped. And to be having to include things in my books, which I know today are not necessarily accurate. So it's like, okay, how do I include it in and like make it clear that this is what they believed then, but also make it clear that maybe some people were still a little suspicious of it because it made absolutely no sense.
Well, speaking of infectious diseases and COVID-19, your heroine suffers from chronic respiratory illness. So, Julia, I have to ask, what did you do?
I don't know. And this was like a totally like, okay, this was written before all of this. And I've never had asthma. I have had a really bad case of pneumonia though, where I was hospitalized. And so I did bring that to it. It was like that feeling of not being able to catch, really what it feels like to do that.
On another aspect of Georgiana, I know a lot of authors base characters off of either other characters that they love or people in their lives. Did you base her on anyone? I am very partial to her and her strawberry blonde hair. So,
well, we do have strawberry blonde hair in our family, and I've always wanted strawberry blonde hair. So I think that may have played into it. But just, I think her natural curiosity. I tried to think about, a lot of there are conversations in this book. I think a lot of them where they get into these conversations, which are really kind of quirky for that time. And these are the type of things I think about, when my mind goes off on bizarre tangents. And so I wanted to give her that type of curiosity. And I thought, well, what would it be like to have that type of curiosity, the type that she has, which is, it's an intellectual curiosity, but it's also kind of a little bit wacky, like taking things off into a bizarre direction. And what is it like to have that at a time when that's not valued for a woman? I mean, it might be for a man, and so she's asking these questions. And then I wanted to think with Nicholas to be like, okay, well, let's come up with a guy who respects that, but also doesn't respects, but doesn't expect. So like there's one time in the book where she, I think she says something about how, don't you think, a woman would be able to treat another woman better or something? And he's like, huh. Yeah, I guess so. I never really thought about it, which I think can be pretty typical. And he agrees with her, but I think this is very typical, people who are open-minded, but maybe not aware of their privilege.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is 1790, whatever. I mean, nobody's aware of what we think of as privilege. So, trying to couch all this in a way that doesn't seem like I'm plunking 20th or 21st century characters. Geez, into the past, but making them, as open-minded in a way that's realistic.
Well, along with that open-mindedness, your hero, and I hope I'm not spoiling anything, has a feature that not a lot of heroes in historical romance have, which is that he actually in any subgenre, which is that he is a virgin hero. What made you want to write that?
He didn't seem like the type of guy who would have slept around much.
Yeah.
And then I also thought, I had been making these jokes with people a lot about how, you look in like romance land of historical romance and everybody's a duke, and they're all really handsome and they all have straight teeth and they're all ripped. And here's the kicker. None of them have syphilis. Okay. That to me is like the least accurate thing ever. And so I thought, well, gosh, how about if you have this guy, like he's not saving himself. He didn't mean to stay a virgin, but like for whatever reason, it didn't happen when, most of the guys his age were doing stuff. And then he starts studying medicine and it's like, holy crap. Like, I'm not going to sleep around. Look at this. He knows too much. And so he just, he's a smart guy. I like smart guys.
As with all of your books, this is bursting with humor and these quirky scenarios. And I was laughing out loud a lot while reading it. I know that it may not be something like that simple to explain, but what is the key to writing a humorous book or writing a funny scene?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I think I think it's in the author's voice,
Mm.
really. I mean, people who know me personally in real life, if they read them in my books, they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I just hear you."
Aw.
And that's really nice. And I think that's true for a lot of authors, actually. So I don't know if it's just the way I approach life. I just think life is funny. I see the funny things in things, and
You also have a very colorful menagerie of cats in this book. Where did they come from? They result in some really hysterical moments on the
okay,
page.
so I do not have a cat at this time. My cat, we had a cat that passed away a long time ago, and we have never replaced him. We always said he was kind of the reason he was such an excellent cat is that he actually acted like a dog, which it was like the best of both worlds. Like he would like love to be petted and was friendly, but like, you didn't have to like clean up his poop. They are not dogs in this way. They do not want to be in the car. And I've driven from Denver to Seattle with a cat, or I should say my husband drove the car with the cat. I really lucked out with that one. Um, they don't like it. And so then I thought, well, why would a cat like a carriage any better? These poor people have to travel, they're traveling from Kent all the way up to Edinburgh. And, what if this cat is absolutely miserable?
Well, I wanted to talk Bridgerton's TV series for a second.
So exciting.
It's so for those tuning in who may not know, Bridgerton's, which is Julia's not it's not your first series, but the series that really made you as an
Yes.
author. Yeah.
Yes. It is certainly the one I'm best known for still.
Yeah, and so it's set in Regency, England. So it is the sequel to this prequel we were just discussing. And there are 8 books, but Netflix and Shondaland have picked it up and are adapting it into a series. And now I know filming wrapped in February. Are you able to give us an update on where things stand, whether the pandemic has disrupted the schedule in terms of its projected fall premiere date?
Well, I don't even know if it's projected fall. I'm just told 2020. Well, I
Okay.
guess fall ends like what, December 21st. So yeah, I guess fall. But I don't know whether it's early or late. It's moving along. I mean, we really were fortunate in that filming wrapped before the pandemic,
Yeah.
because that would be the part that would be the most disrupted. They are, just digging in post-production right now, and I think it's going really well. Before I even visited the set, I read all the scripts and I was blown away. It's so good, and it's not a word for word adaptation, but it shouldn't be because it's a television series. It's a different, you know, it's film, which makes it different. And I think adapting something for a television series is different than adapting something for a feature film, a movie length thing too. So, they're interweaving a few, new stories and different stories, but the heart of this season is really the story of the Duke and I. And so that's wonderful. And how they did it and how they structured it. And again, I'm being very cagey here because I can't share, is just brilliant. And before I read it, I was on the phone with Betsy Beers, who's one of the main people at Shonda. She's one of the executive producers alongside Shonda Rhimes and Chris Van Dusen. And Betsy said, Shonda just wants to warn you that, it opens just it's structured differently. It opens a little differently. And, I read it and it was fascinating because I was like, it was so clear to me that this was the absolute best way to do it. And I would never have thought of it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, and it really kind of brought home to me that, screenwriting is a very different thing than novel writing. But the scripts are fabulous. And then I visited the set and it was just magical. And oh my gosh, the costumes.
Oh,
You're going to die. You are going to die when you see the costumes. And the sets too. I mean, they actually, at some point will, release it. They actually took a film of me walking into seeing the sets for the first time. I was like covering my eyes and then open up, and it's this really big sound stage. So I mean, it's this huge space to begin with. It's vast and tall ceilings. I can't even. And then of course the actors are incredible. They're all. It's going to be amazing. I cannot wait. I can't wait to see it, and I cannot wait for everybody else to see it.
You said you're not great at visualizing, so this might be a hard question for you,
Mm-hmm.
but if you were going to cast Georgiana and Nicholas at the ages they are in First Comes Scandal, would you have any thoughts?
No, I'm terrible at that. And I mean, that's something I've known for years. And then I absolutely learned it, when I got to actually see a casting director. I mean, not directly, but see the work of a casting
Yeah.
director. And it was, you should have seen me like when I got the list of actors, which was not very much before, when they went public with it. Well, the first one was Julie Andrews. That was different. That, like, I stopped breathing for long enough that I legitimately should be dead. I mean, I just was, and when I opened the email and I was sitting on my bed and my husband was there, which was weird because it was like earlier in the day. I don't even know why he was home. And I was like, and he's like, what's going on? What's going on? I mean, it was just in my wildest dreams that was not a thing. But with the actors who were cast, a lot of them, they're all working actors who've done a lot, but not necessarily in starring roles. And, so I would start looking them up and being like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. Or, and it was really, really fascinating to see, how they did this. And then, of course, when I got to see, I've been able to see a number of them in action, and it's just, shivers. It's so good.
A lot of people are talking right now about reading as an escape and, one of the few things that we can still do while we're locked inside. So if people are able to focus on a book, which is its own problem, why are romance novels and the Bridgertons and the Bridgerton prequels the perfect place to escape to right now?
Happy endings. I mean, that's the thing with a romance novel. You're going to get a happy ending. You might not know how you're going to get there, but you're going to get a happy ending. And with my books, you'll also probably get a lot of laughter, which I think we all need right now. But if I could do one little plug right now, is that we really need to support independent bookstores right at this time. It's really hard. They've all had to, shutter their doors. And so I'm working with University Bookstore in Seattle, and I've worked with them for years. You've always been able to buy autographed books by me there, but I will be going in on April 22nd, which is the day after release day, with my mask. I probably should have it here, with my latex gloves, wielding like Clorox wipes like a boss. And I'm going to be autographing books for them to mail out to people. Please consider going to the link that's in the description in this video, or on my website, just juliequinn.com/autographed. And you can get instructions on how to order books from a wonderful, wonderful independent bookstore.
We've been talking First Comes Scandal by Julia Quinn, our wonderful guest for today. Be sure to check out the book when it's available April 21st and buy it from University Bookstore or another indie bookstore. And stay safe and stay well. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. And everybody wash your hands.